What's up, guys? We got a lot of new Gears 4 news, and most of it I would say is good, but there is something that I wanted to talk about that was mentioned that I think needs a lot more thought, and that would be the Coalition's decision to release basically two different types of weapon tunings, ultimately being categorized under the core category or competitive category when it comes to choosing which playlist you want to participate in. And I will link in the description the blog, which you should read as it has all the hard facts and details in depth so you can get a better understanding of what I'm talking about. But I'll assume for the rest of the video that you've read it and you know what's happening. But basically, we're going to see different weapon tuning for the players who choose to be in, I guess, what you would say is the mainstream playlist or the main audience, and then a separate set of weapon balance and possibly playlists for those who choose to play in a competitive setting. Right away when I read this, I must say I was really frustrated. I don't think this is a good move. I'm open to persuasion if anybody thinks this is an excellent move and has good reasons for it. But there are a lot of problems that just kind of popped in my head, and I thought that this is a decision that might not seem like a big one, but is and should really be talked about. I know that you can switch back and forth between categories. You know, you're not bound to one. So if you want to switch from core to competitive, you can. But I just don't think that's really how a lot of players will operate. I think a lot of players will identify heavier with one category and spend all of their time or the majority of their time in that playlist. And I think there are some negatives that are associated with this kind of behavior. Number one being that it sounds like we're going to have more or less a segregated community. Those players who played at a very high level in one group, probably a minority group, and a larger set of, let's say, mainstream players or casual players in a different group. And I just don't like the idea of that when it comes to bridging the gap between the competitive and let's just say your mainstream audience, like I was saying. I've always liked the idea that if you are a competitive player, you know if you are the best, that everybody else who's playing that game is playing the exact same game as you. And for some reason, it doesn't feel that way to me if there's a different weapon tunings and weapon settings that you're using. Now, I understand that one of the issues was that it was very difficult to get new Gears players into the game because it's a very difficult game to compete in to begin with. But that was, to me, was more of an issue of who you were being match made against. So the solution to this was to make a ranking system so that you're versing people who are just as good or around your skill level, and that would ultimately lead to matches that are, you know, fun uh, and exciting regardless of what skill level you're at. So I just don't really see this weapon tuning being necessary. I think that a lot of players would prefer if there was just one universal set of weapon tuning. I think that makes it us more on the same page and more inclined to even want to improve and compete at a competitive level if you are a casual gamer or mainstream gamer. Ultimately, I think this is something that should have been tested in the beta, but I do understand that this was a response to the beta from the feedback that they got. But I think it's a really big decision to be making. I'm very skeptical of it, and I guess I'm putting out this video to see if there's any other points of view that perhaps I'm missing or if that you agree, because I do think that this is a bigger decision than some people may think at the end of the day. This topic is something that I'll probably be thinking a lot more about, especially after reading what people are saying in the community, but I definitely hope this conversation isn't over between the coalition and its fan base. I think this really does need to be talked about more in depth. I'm even just having trouble envisioning where myself as a player, which playlist I'd like to sink the most time into, and I'm not sure if I'd like the idea of switching back and forth. I've always liked the idea of having a universal setting and climbing the ladder, but now I don't really know which ladder to climb, if that makes sense. Anyway, let me know what you think, and I look forward to reading your thoughts.